And welcome to another episode of Patriots 4th and 2. I am your host today, Derek Havens, and joining me, as always, is Mr. Steve Balestrieri. We are both PatsFans.com bloggers. On today's episode, we are going to discuss the Patriots defense and kind of break down that. I definitely want to make sure, though, to start off the show by saying please check out PatsFans.com for some great content, and also subscribe to us on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. Please like, share, leave us a review. Helps us keep us high in the podcast rankings so other Patriots fans can find us. Before we kick off the show, though, Steve, how we doing, man?
We're doing good. As I told you offline, today was a good day. We're painting the outside of the house, and today I got more paint on the house than on me. So
that is the goal.
That's the goal.
I actually just closed on my first house. Last week, so that's pretty exciting. So taking steps through this crazy world here. So it's been a very busy time. So I know that when we talked 2 weeks ago, we had discussed maybe doing a show last week, maybe not. There really hasn't been a whole lot of things going on, Steve, from a Patriots standpoint. I it's one of those really rare dead times of the NFL calendar where OTAs aren't quite here. There's a couple of unpadded practices, some minor transactions, but really nothing is kind of, I guess, encapsulating the entire sports world like the NFL normally does. Is there anything that you can think of outside of what we were going to talk about with the defense that you wanted to discuss? Because
I think
there's really not a whole lot going on.
Yeah, with the OTAs going on, the third-round draft pick, Marte Mapu, is getting a lot of play in OTAs, which is good. I mean, I'm glad to see that. They were praising his
based on some of the, I didn't mean to cut you off, but based on some of the, I don't want to say reports, but I guess commentary from people who are down in Foxborough, I mean, he's getting some significant run.
Yeah, which is good. I mean, I love to see it. I mean, we know he's very athletic. He's a hard hitter. He's versatile. They've been commenting on his versatility, and his athleticism. So that's all good stuff. I'm glad to hear that, and the other day with, the top four wide receivers not practicing, the rookies got a lot of play, which isn't necessarily a good thing with all the other guys out, but there's still a ways to go before mini camp, and that's the big one before they break for training camp. So as long as all those guys are ready for training camp, I don't have any big issue with that. And it's good
earlier I said no OTAs. I meant we haven't started minicamp yet. There have been a couple of OTAs. Any commentary from you or any comments, thoughts on the punishment that the team received based on some of we didn't really talk about that a couple weeks ago. I think it's only been I think that was right after we recorded our last episode, and the team got basically to sum it up in extremely layman terms is basically the team went longer than they should have, because there's a certain time period. And, there was a player representative that is supposed to kind of keep, a checks and balances system between coaches and players to make sure that, that they're not going over the time allotted. Joe Judge was kind of name checked in this report. Bill talked to the media, Belichick, obviously, and basically said he took responsibility for it. It was basically a slap on the wrist, Steve. I don't think it's really anything super critical, but it was just one of those things where they kind of overextended themselves a little bit from a coaching standpoint.
Yeah, it was a mistake. It was something they should have known, but there was a 15-minute special teams meeting, and Joe Judge had called that. They put it on the team's internal schedule, and which put that certain amount of players over the 4-hour limit that they're allowed to be in the facility during OTAs. Right. So
So it's really, like I said, it's a very minor infraction. I would classify it, Steve, as a really dumb mistake. Like it's either. I mean, if even if it wasn't a mistake, even if it was intentional by them, it just seems so unnecessary, and
Yeah.
it's just it was certain. If it was intentional, it was a poor case in judgment, and if it was a mistake, it was a stupid one. That's
Yeah.
basically where I would.
Belichick made light of it. He actually joked about it.
Right.
They asked him, what did the players think? And he laughed and said, they got a long weekend. So,
yeah. Yeah. So, I don't think anyone should really overreact to the news. I just wanted to mention it just because I felt like we should. But let's get it.
Last year, several teams
Oh, yeah.
had the same type of mistakes.
I think the Ravens had something, I want to say,
The Ravens,
last year.
Cowboys, I think the Bears.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I said, I understand that it's probably a little bit of a tightrope because you want to maximize time. If you're coaches, you want to maximize that time with players, but you also need to make sure that you hold yourself accountable, which is why they have these NFL PA reps in the building, that are players on your team that are doing that so that they follow the rules the way they should. And it's not really an anti-Patriots thing or anything like that. It's just one of those things where that's it. They're not the first team. They're not the last. And that's just how it is.
And the thing is I don't think they were trying to hide it because they put it on their schedule. So
yeah, like I said, I don't know.
I think it was just a dumb mistake.
Yeah, some kind of lapse in judgment.
Yeah, but it is what it is, and they lost 2 practices. I don't think the players were complaining too much.
No, I don't think they were either. So let's move on and talk about. So Steve and I, for people listening, Steve and I had discussed, what we're going to talk about during this dead time, and we figured we would spend an episode talking about the defense as a whole and the offense as a whole. We decided to start with defense. No really rhyme or reason for it. Just felt like that's where we were going to start. So. Let's get into it, Steve. And look, I don't know what your expectations are for the defense. I'm actually really, really intrigued. I am. I can envision a scenario for this Patriots team as a whole to be on a better. This is going to sound confusing, but let me walk through it, people. I can envision a scenario, Steve, where this team is actually better and on a better trajectory, but they have a worse record than last year. Because I just think their schedule is really hard, and I still think they're growing. But I do think that you have a lot of young players that could really play a strong role in this defense, and I think that's exciting. And I'm looking forward to that. Do you understand where I'm coming from when I say that?
Absolutely, and that's an entirely logical argument that you can make for that because they have the toughest schedule in the league this year.
Yeah, I mean, on paper, certainly, right? It's brutal.
The quarterbacks in the division have gotten better, obviously, because they added Aaron Rodgers to it. But I'm not entirely sold on Rodgers being the guy.
I'm not either.
Everyone's expecting him to vault the Jets to possible, Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, I respect the talent of Rodgers, certainly. But I mean, he hasn't been the same player, over the last year or so. And I mean, but I say that to say this, that I could see him having a great year. I could see him having a very good year because he has because of what he has around him. He doesn't have to be in Green Bay so many times. Packers fans will talk to you about how what was his name? The former GM, Ted Thompson, who passed away. Ted Thompson, Brian Gutekunst for the Packers. Like so many times, it was like Rodgers was like the only guy, there. And I'm not saying that he had no help. He had some good receivers along the way, but a lot of times people would complain, who are Packers fans, would be like, they're not giving him enough, like some of the other star quarterbacks are given around the league to kind of help support them. And now he has assuming Breece Hall comes back healthy, he was terrific, in his short stint as a rookie. And they have a very good defense, and they have some good weapons there, some familiar faces for him. I mean, on paper, they should be very good, Steve. But we know that this game isn't played on paper, and we know how that goes.
And we don't know how these new pieces are all going to gel together with the coaching staff yet.
Sure. And even though I'm saying the Patriots, again, I still, when I say that they could have a worse record, I just think because the competition's high, and I just don't think they're there yet. But I also think they could be better than last year and have that record. I do but if you're telling me that Mac Jones, say they go, I always get this record screwed up. Now they went to 17 games. Say they go 7-10. Okay. But Mac Jones looks really comfortable and strong in Bill O'Brien's offense. Aren't we saying, going into next offseason, okay, Mac's back on track. We have the guy that we thought we did. His year 2 was an anomaly. And we have some of these young players that they've drafted over the last 2 or 3 years. Now we have some building blocks. Let's go ahead and take that next step. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibilities.
No, and that's one of the beauties of this game is, you and I look back after the season, and we said it was entirely possible this team could have won 11 games last year,
right? Because
of dumb mistakes or fumbles, turnovers, whatever you want to say. That was there for the taking. Not that they were going to make any noise in the postseason, but they could have actually won 10 or 11 games. That's why I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility at all that even with this schedule, they could have a winning record.
Yep.
And win 9 or 10 football games. I don't
think
I
agree. If I had to guess, I would go closer to what I just said at 7-10, just based on the competition level, because the AFC is so challenging. And we talked about the schedule a couple of weeks ago. If I had to guess, but I'm not discrediting that. I mean, they were very close last year to doing some things. People point to the Raiders game, but people also have to remember that game was tied. It's not like they cost themselves the game. They cost themselves a chance to win it. The Bengals game to me was worse, looking back on it. And I was there for that game. And the Bengals let you hang. They let you hang around. They let you hang around. They gave you a chance to get him in the neck, and you couldn't do it. And that's the difference in this team the last few years.
That was the fumble, right?
That was the Ramondre Stevenson fumble at the 5-yard line.
Yeah. So
or whatever it was. It was inside the 5.
Yeah, but they were in scoring range, and so because and I go back to that Minnesota game too. I mean,
the Minnesota one sucks too.
Yeah,
yeah.
So the chances were there for them, but and I'm going back to what we're going to talk about today is the defense, because I thought the defense was good last year. There were some holes in it, but overall, I thought they played very well last year.
Yeah. I mean, they've had better defenses in the past than last season specifically, obviously. But I think that they showed, unlike the offense, they were greater than the sum of their parts. Yes. And I thought that Josh Uche, Uche's in a really interesting position right now. I don't know if last year was him kind of breaking out, or if it was more of an anomaly. I'm not sure, but he has the chance to make a lot of money, and I'm sure that's on his mind. It should be. I would think that's on any athlete's mind that's going into a contract year, especially one coming off a rookie deal. And we know what Judon brings to the table. I do have some concerns with Judon because I don't think it's unfair to say that he has slowed down as the season's progressed in his time here. And they have to. I thought last year they managed his snaps better, and he still got slower at the end. But if he's opening up and creating opportunities for someone like Uche to come in, well, then so be it. He's still having a positive impact. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And that's why I love the move they made with Keon White, Mapu, and of course Christian Gonzalez, who I think is going to step right in to that left cornerback role.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, let's start with the front seven, and then we'll go to the secondary. So, front seven, Keon White, like you said, Mapu, Josh Uche. I mean, you have some young guys here that could really make a big difference. I mean, and I think we talked about this off the air, not too long ago. But I think their front seven possibilities are incredibly intriguing.
Right. And I go to Christian Barmore because
he's kind of the forgotten guy right now.
Yeah. We expected big things out of him last year. And it seemed like he was going to make that jump. Then he gets hurt and he wasn't where he should have been, I think, last year, judging on his second year. But you still can see the possibilities that are there with him. Maybe this is the year that he really starts to dominate.
Right.
And think about it. If you're getting that kind of domination from him, in the middle, then, you have all kinds of possibilities. Keon White can bump inside on, sub package roles. You still have Judon, obviously, Uche.
And Dietrich Wise had a good year last year.
Dietrich Wise had a best year of his career, I thought.
And I'm still kind of intrigued with Daniel Aquale.
Yes.
I just am. It's nothing against like Carl Davis or anybody like that, but I really would like to see them. I know that Bill always likes his veterans. I understand that veterans can bring more to the table for immediate wins. I'm really hoping for someone like Aquale or somebody like that. I'm not saying just him, but somebody like that to get more significant reps. I want to see this. I want to see these young players. I want to see them take a step forward, and have some new building blocks and go into it. Like, again, we're going to talk about the secondary in a second, but it's like, how great would it be if Marcus Jones and Jack Jones and Keon White and Mapu start making plays all over the field this year? We're going to be going there next year, be like half of our defense are all first and second year players.
Yeah,
that's huge.
That's exactly right. The thing about Aquale is I think he's a good sub package pass rusher, but I think they want him to start showing he's a 3-down player.
Right. And I'm not sure if he can be. And I would also say, even if he's not, you can still have a role. Like, I'm not sure that Josh Uche is a 3-down player, but he could still make a ton of money and still have a huge impact if he plays half the reps. If they have someone like Anthony Jennings, who's better at setting the edge on the first down, maybe even second down, you don't think Uche can still go ahead and have multiple sacks in a game and have a huge impact? Of course he could. And sure. I would say the same thing for Aquale too. They just need to keep establishing, Steve, again, building blocks. That's all it really is right now.
Yeah, and I can see a guy like Mapu, playing a sub-package linebacker role where they can use him in coverage or blitz him, and, we've seen he hits a ton. He's very athletic. I think the possibilities are really, starting to come into focus for him, especially we said at the outset of this, the fact that he's getting so much play this early in OTAs. The coaching staff wants to see what he's capable of, and we won't know that until the pads come on. But the fact that he's digesting, the defense, and he's learning his responsibilities. Belichick mentioned yesterday, it's drinking through a garden hose, that the rookies, they're all working hard. They're, digesting everything, but there's a lot to learn.
Right. Which player in the front seven are you most excited to see this year?
To me, it's the two rookies, Keon White and Mapu, because I just have the feeling that they saw something in these guys. They went after them. They targeted these two. So, I just I'm really excited about them. And, I always favor the linebackers anyway because that's
Me
my
too.
favorite position. But, with the edge and Mapu at, interior, maybe even edge linebacker and sub packages, I think these guys are going to be really exciting to watch. And I think we won't have to wait until year 2 to see these guys making an impact on the field.
I would say Mapu for me. And one of the guys that I just respect tremendously and I love listening and reading to is Daniel Jeremiah. And not only because I think he's very level-headed with his analysis, but I also know that he's worked for multiple organizations. So he's been on kind of both sides of that fence. And when you listen to him talk about Mapu coming out of nowhere at the Senior Bowl, like this is a guy that very few people said, I'm paraphrasing for him, obviously, but this is a guy that, not everybody knew exactly who he was. And he kind of came onto the scene and you're like, holy crap, he hits like a Mack truck. He's flying around. All of a sudden, they're in practices and he's leading drills. And I just am really intrigued by that, and sometimes these guys just need an opportunity to shine on a shine on a bigger stage. And I'm really, really interested in I'm really, really interested in what he can bring to the table because he's the kind of chess piece that Bill Belichick, I think, could move around in multiple different ways. And I think he'd be a fun guy to watch. And I could see them trying him out at a couple different things. I know that Bill's MO is traditionally like, hey, we're going to start with one thing. And when you get good at one thing, then we'll take on the next. I could see him being a little bit more versatile with Mapu. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. And, going back to Daniel Jeremiah, I was watching the draft on television and he came right out and said, this is one of my favorite players in the draft. And the rest of the guys on the panel were just like, whoa, because that took them by surprise.
Right.
And he talked about all the same things you just mentioned. I don't remember the exact words, but he was talking about his versatility, how he thinks he's a perfect fit in the Belichick defense. So I'm really looking forward to him getting on the field. And I really think that Keon White is going to be a valuable pickup for the Patriots. He's that kind of guy. He has some versatility as well. And, he's another guy that Belichick just always seems to find a good role for.
Right.
And like you said, you start getting production from your first and second year players. That's setting you up for long-term success.
Definitely. No, absolutely. Totally agree with that. Let's step aside real quick, Steve, just take a really quick break. And then we will start talking about the secondary and, some other parts of the defense. All right, and we are back here on Patriots 4th and 2. Again, Derek Havens and Steve Balestrieri with you today. We've been talking about the defense, specifically the front seven, and now we're going to talk about a little bit about the secondary. And Steve, let me tell you, I am fascinated by the possibilities with this group. I think that the Devin McCourty absence is certainly going to be felt. I could see some issues, especially maybe early in the season. I don't think it would last all year long, but I could see some communication issues happening early in the year. I wouldn't totally bet on it. I just wouldn't be surprised by it, how I should put it.
No, and you're replacing a guy that's been there for like 14 seasons. So, yeah. I mean, you just don't plug and play a guy in there and expect to have the same, production out of all your players in the secondary. McCourty was the quarterback of the secondary. And, there's going to be some drop off initially. I'm sure of that. But, they have so many good, versatile players there. I think by the end of the season, this secondary is going to be really, really good. Excuse me.
Yeah, and I'm really interested with Jabril Peppers. I thought he came on really strong last
Oh
year
yeah.
towards the end of the year, and they have a lot of guys. The one thing I'll say that I'm interested and I almost am a little worried about it, but I'm it's not really a big worry. It's just kind of in the back of my mind is they have a lot of these tweeners, and I could see that being a good and a bad thing, if that makes any sense.
Yep.
As excited I am about Kyle Duggar and Jabril Peppers and Mapu and Adrian Phillips, I feel like these guys are all like the same size. So I'm like, what, you know what I mean? Like, so, I'm really, really interested in Peppers. He's kind of in the back of my mind being like the guy that I have some lofty expectations for because it is another 1 year contract for him. And he is coming. Yes, he came off, was a torn ACL 2 years ago, but he did build on that throughout the year, and he seemed comfortable. And they had him all over the place, so I could see him being a big part of this defense.
Yeah, absolutely. And this safety group, especially, I mean, they have 5 guys that they could put on the field easily, and I don't think it would hurt them. I
Right.
mean, so Duggar, I think this is the year he comes into his zone. McCourty's gone. I think he's going to take in. He's a veteran now. He's played 3 years. And I think he's going to step into that leadership role. And, I think, it's going to be interesting to see how they move these guys around because I could see Duggar playing some deep safety. I could see
Yep.
Jalen Mills playing deep safety, Um,
And Mills
even
kind of alluded to that on Twitter not too
yeah,
long ago. He kind
yeah,
of said like that he was going to do that. And look, if they do that, I would have no problem with it because that was his best year as a pro in Philadelphia. Was his 4th year at safety.
yeah. And you have Peppers. Peppers was, he was still coming back from that injury at the beginning of the year last year. But as you said, he really came on, and you and I were talking on the show early in the spring about how we both wanted him to be re-signed. They gave him a 1-year deal. I think last year wasn't the prove it deal. They just wanted to see if he was healthy. I
Right.
think this is the prove it
I think
year
if he
for
has a good
him.
year this year, they'll sign him to a multi-year contract.
Yes, I think so too.
But I
Because
almost would like to see Peppers in more of a linebacker role, like more in the box, and have Duggar and Phillips. They really like to use on tight ends, and he does a very good job with that. And if they have Mills deep, and you have Duggar kind of roaming around, I mean, I think that'd be a fun little mix,
oh,
of guys.
absolutely. That's why I think for the secondary, I think Duggar is probably the most important piece they got this year because I
Right.
think he's going to have to be the guy that, holds it all together and takes on that leadership role. And, we talked just a couple of moments ago about maybe having some communication issues. And I think that's the big thing where he's going to have to step up. He's going to have to ensure that they don't have those.
Yeah. I mean, it's a big year for Duggar too. I mean, we've talked about some of these guys. I
Right.
mean, Duggar, it's a big year for him from a contract standpoint. This isn't his. Well, this is his 3rd year or 4th year.
He came in 2020. So, yeah, this is his 4th year.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Time flies.
I know.
So he's got a big year too. I
Yeah.
mean,
Oh,
yeah,
absolutely. I think this is a huge year for him simply because with McCourty gone, I think they expect him, to take over that role. And I think it's reasonable for them. Excuse me. I just whacked my own screen. I think it's reasonable for the team to expect that now too. He's not a 1st or 2nd year player. He's a 4th year guy, and he's gotten progressively better. And I think this is the year where it all comes together for him. I think he's going to be a Pro Bowl player this year.
And you know what? Like, They don't really have a lot of rah-rah, kind of leaders. But, between Wise and Bentley and Duggar and Jonathan Jones, I mean, they have some more silent leaders, and I think they have some good leadership on that side of the ball.
Yeah. And again, when I go back to earlier in McCourty's career, he was kind of a quiet leader. And then as time wore on, he got that more vocal type of thing.
Right.
Because I remember early in his career, him and Donta Hightower were kind of like those, guys that just lead by example and they don't say too much, because they were younger players. I think, he morphed into that. And I think that Duggar will probably do that this year. I fully expect that.
Yeah, I could definitely see it. And then you go to cornerbacks, and I'm wondering what they do with Jonathan Jones. It's like I have a hard time believing Christian Gonzalez won't be heavily in the rotation from day one. I know that Marcus Jones will probably be the fourth guy, I would imagine. I assume the top three are going to be Jack Jones, Jonathan Jones, and Christian Gonzalez, with Marcus Jones kind of being right there. I'm sure Miles Bryant's going to make the team. Sorry, everybody, but I know he's going to make the team. And I do think they'll use Jalen Mills more, maybe as a matchup guy, but I could see him being more safety. And if he's going to go to that role, I have no problem. Hey, yeah, you probably will have a couple of issues, at that cornerback spot at times. You're going to have some growing pains with a second year and a first year guy, but I mean, you gotta live with that when you're a young team. That's what you gotta do.
And part of it will be matchups,
right?
If they're playing a certain team, they might want Mills to slide back over into the corner spot.
And if they're playing Miami, for example, they might want Jonathan Jones to shadow Tyreek Hill because of his speed.
Exactly.
So, I mean, I do think similar, not as much a cornerback as safety in the front seven, but there are some good matchup and kind of different variations and variables with the players that I think they could use to their advantage here. And I'm really intrigued by that.
Yeah. And, I read something, I forgot who wrote it, but I thought it was really good because they talked about Miles Bryant, and he's not really a man-to-man, cover guy, and as we've all seen.
Mm-hmm.
But who wrote that? I don't want to say a name because it'd probably be wrong, but they said, when the Patriots go to zone, that's when Miles Bryant, tends to be, on the television making good plays.
Right. I think Miles' problem, I mean, he does struggle man to man, but I also think one of his bigger problems is something that he can't change, which is his size. And I think that sometimes he's just too limited, with who he's matching up with. But they like his versatility. They like the way they can move him to safety, they can move him to corner, they can move him all around the place. And Bill values versatility at higher than almost any coach in the league.
And Bill likes him, so he's not going anywhere.
He's not going anywhere. So buy your Miles Bryant jersey now. So
because he's not going anywhere.
No, I'll be shocked when he gets cut. I don't know when that will be, but I'm not going to hold my breath for it.
No, but Christian Gonzalez is the kind of chess piece they needed to play the type of defense that they like to.
Right.
They like to rely on a corner. They might not do it much this year since he is a rookie, but I think that's the role they envision for him. The corner that they can put out there by himself, and they're not going to worry about that. And I think with his size and athleticism, that was a perfect pick for them. You and I talked about that before the draft. There was a couple of corners that we both really liked. And the fact that they were able to still trade down and get who we thought was probably the best corner in the draft this year. So I thought that
I'm going to be honest, and this is a totally different rant. I'm still a little, as much as I'm happy that they traded down, got the pick, and got Christian Gonzalez ultimately, because that's really who I wanted the team to take. I'm still a little annoyed that they traded down and they just didn't take their guy. It's like, go up and just get your guy. Did you see the clip going around of the Commanders calling the Patriots and trying to trade up? And the Patriots wanted a third round pick and they wouldn't take it. And I understand that, if I looked at the trade value chart and it was a high demand, so I understand that they probably were like we're not unless you want to really overpay us, we're not going to go ahead and give up this selection, because there was obviously somebody they wanted, and who they wanted was probably Gonzalez. At the same time, it's like, okay, but you still had a price. You know what I mean? Like, it's not just like, so that's one of those things. And if you go back and look at some of those breadcrumbs through the draft, and you look at who was in front of the Patriots and everything. Dog, my puppy is just zooming around the apartment again. So I apologize for the noise. She's shutting doors. She's jumping up against her like elevated bed. She's throwing her bone around. I don't know what's going on. So I would also say that you have there was a lot of good intel on the teams going in front of the Patriots for who they wanted to select. And again, going back to Daniel Jeremiah, he had mentioned that the Emmanuel Forbes Washington Commander buzz was real strong, prior to the draft. Like, day of the draft, a lot of teams knew that that's who they wanted. And so whether there's moles, whether they're smoke screens or something, there are some idea, that people do have ideas of who, what teams are going to take what player and stuff. And so I'm fascinated by that. I'm curious who the Patriots would have selected if Christian Gonzalez was gone. I think Keon White, honestly, would have been in the conversation, because I think they really, really liked him. And that was kind of one of the rumors going around, was that, he was in that conversation. But, that's kind of a story for a different day.
So. Yeah. The amazing thing to me was Washington was convinced that the Patriots wanted Forbes.
Yes.
And I think they just talked themselves into that.
Yep.
But, I don't have any heartburn. The Patriots tried to hardball them, because obviously they had the feeling too that they were going to go after Forbes, because that was common knowledge.
Yep.
So they didn't have any desires on that. And they were hoping to get a third round pick out of it, which I don't blame them a bit for that. I know.
No, I don't either.
I think it was slanted in the Patriots' favor, but they bet on that. It didn't work out. The deal kind of fell apart. But then the Steelers stepped up, and they wanted the tackle, knowing the Jets wanted the tackle, and that was just too good a situation for the Patriots because they knew the Steelers weren't going to draft Gonzalez, and if they could, maneuver the Jets out of that guy, it was Broderick Jones, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, it was Broderick Jones. But, if they could maneuver the Jets out of that equation, then they're still helping themselves and, they're hurting a division rival.
Yeah. And obviously, we'll have to see where all these guys pan out. Going back to Emmanuel Forbes just really quickly, I know this isn't Commanders, a Commanders podcast, but I'm fascinated by him. I'm really curious to see how he plays out, because he is on the smaller side, but his ball production is undeniable. And if you watch his highlights, he's really got a nice knack for it. And Patriots will see him this year, so I'll be kind of curious to see how he goes. I still think they got the better player in Christian Gonzalez.
I think Forbes is more of a zone corner,
right,
than a man.
And Gonzalez played under an Oregon defense that used a lot of formations, and that was they were in man, they were in zone, it was, cover 0, cover 3, they were all over the place. And they like to spin the dial, kind of, quote unquote. And I think that's one of the things that drew the Patriots to him, aside from his athletic ability, is because that he was in more of a complex cover defense, where a lot of college offenses, given the kind of vertical, they have this whole thing called, like, a vertical spread. Like, and for people, I'm not going to get too much into the X's and O's, because frankly, I know some about it, but I'm not going to pretend like I'm going to break down everything, but like Tennessee's offense, for example, like that's technically, like, with Josh Huppel, like that's a vertical spread offense. And like a lot of college defenses run like cover 2, which is basically just like 2 deep safeties, because they just know that, it's defense in college. I mean, the tackling's not always great. They'd rather give up a 10-yard play than a 40-yard bomb, etc. So, that's why Oregon's defense is one of the more complex ones in the entire country, because they run a lot of different things. And, I that's why I'm so intrigued with Gonzalez, because I feel like he'll fit right in here from that standpoint.
Absolutely. And I think he's destined for a really solid, if not superb, NFL career.
So. Yeah, I mean, he certainly has a lot of the capabilities. I mean, Jesus, just these. I'm like everybody else on Twitter. Some of these clips of Christian Gonzalez, with the hips and everything. I'm sitting there, like, being like, "All right, let's go, baby, let's go." Any final thoughts, Steve, before we wrap up?
No, I just think this defense is going to be very, very good this year. I really believe that, and they're going to have to be good 16, 17 weeks.
Yep.
Because they have a tough schedule, but I think they're going to be up to it. Now, injuries are always
a factor.
It's always a caveat in there, because we've seen teams that are absolutely loaded, then they have a bunch of injuries and things happen. But if they can stay healthy on defense, that defense should keep them in every game this year.
No, I totally agree. And I'm really, to kind of sum up what we've talked about, I'm extremely intrigued with this defense. I know they're going to have some ups and downs, because let's be honest. I mean, the quarterbacks in the AFC, the offenses in the AFC right now are loaded, and as much as even though some people heard me say, to start the show, I think they could have a worse record than last year and still be better. I would also say, in the same breath, if they were in the NFC, I think there's a chance that they're a playoff team, and but right now the AFC is really stacked, and the defense is going to have their hands full with all these quarterbacks they're going to face. I mean, they're going to face, I want to say there's like 13 or 14. We'll revisit this for the next podcast. I know we're going to talk about the offense next, on our next show, but there's like 13 to 14 of their 17 quarterbacks that I would classify as really good players. And, that's tough. It's like, say what you want about Daniel Jones. He's coming off a killer year. That's not going to be an easy game. You could talk about the Colts, the Commanders, the Saints. Like, yeah, those aren't great teams, but like Derek Carr is not a god awful player. You could do worse than him. And it's like, I don't know exactly what the Saints are going to be, but like, there's only a handful. There's really no team on the schedule for the Patriots that I'm like, yeah, that's a definite win, and I'm not saying there's definite losses, but there's going to be some uphill challenges starting right in week 1 with the Philadelphia Eagles at home, and so it's going to be a challenge for this defense, Steve, but I'm really, really intrigued with the personnel they have. I mean, I'm intrigued with the positional versatility and with some of the younger guys, and I'm really, really excited about that.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about the quarterbacks. They're going to face Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers twice, Josh Allen twice.
Yep.
Tua twice.
Yep.
The list goes on. So
Dak Prescott, they're going to face.
Dak Prescott. Daniel Jones. I mean, it's going to be a really challenging season, but I think the defense is going to be up for it. I'm not saying they're going to shut everybody down. They're not, but
yeah,
They
I mean,
have the
they're playing the Chargers too, I think, at home at 1:00. So you got Justin Herbert there too, who I'm frustrated with Justin Herbert from a total aside, because I just think he's just too inconsistent. Part of me feels like that team is kind of like trick or treat, where you really just don't know what you're going to get. I actually think it's more of a reflection on their head coach, which is a story for another day, but I'm not a big Brandon Staley fan, if people haven't picked up on that over the last few months of me mentioning him. But, I mean, that's not going to be easy either. I mean, like I said, you go through the list, it's like, damn, you got some really, really tough games coming up. So the defense is going to have their challenges, but I am intrigued to see how they match up, what variations they use, Steve, where they move guys around to. And most importantly, I'm hoping that we see first and second year players get their opportunity so that we can see, hey, what we can build on going forward, because I know if you're a diehard Patriots fan, which you probably are, if you're listening to this podcast, you're thinking to yourself like, hey, you never know if this team can pull some magic off. I think a lot of people know that it's not likely they're going to be like legit Super Bowl contenders, but I think that you could also say, well, we can still learn a lot about this team and build on the future. You have to take certain steps year by year in order to get to that spot. And, I think they've put a couple of good drafts together with some intriguing players. And if Keon White and Christian Gonzalez and Marte Mapu, come up to be legitimate role players for you and contributors, I think you're coming away pretty happy by the end of the season.
Absolutely. And, that goes to my feeling on this. I'm always optimist.
Yep.
So,
to a fault.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just think they're going to be really good this year.
Yeah, it'll be fun. I'm really excited. So, next week, Steve, we'll talk about the offense, and we can kind of do the same thing, just kind of have an open conversation about it. And if any other news breaks, obviously we'll touch on that. But again, for Steve Balestrieri, I'm Derek Havens. Thank you again for listening to PatsFans.com or Patriots 4th and 2. Be sure to check out PatsFans.com for some great content with our fearless leader, Ian Logue, running the show. And also be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. Please like, share, leave us a review. Keeps us high in the podcast rankings so other Patriots fans can find us. And we will talk to you guys next week. Hope everyone has a good week, okay?